you're a writer whose mind is a whirlwind of creativity and distraction, hello and welcome back to Writing While Distracted. I'm so glad you're here with me today. I'm your Neuro Spicy writing coach, Brenda Murphy. Stay tuned as we discuss the 4 stages of submission. And before you get too excited, I'm talking about submitting your writing work. So the title of this podcast is The 4 Stages of Submission. And no, not that kind of submission. I'm talking about hitting the send button after you've polished your manuscript to hell and back and you've sent it off to your editor or to an agent or even to your beta readers. That kind of submission. And with all due apologies to my friends who have to deal with myself between the time I send a manuscript out and hear back from my editor, the stages that I'm going to talk about are stages that I experience each time I send a book off for evaluation. And I'm going to talk about myself in this instance because I want you to understand that the fears and anxieties and worries that you have as a neurospicy person, while they are unique to you, there are some universal experiences that go along with submitting your work to someone else. And I want you to understand some strategies for dealing with those emotions and the discomfort that comes along with revealing a huge part of yourself to strangers. And even if you have worked with your editor or a publishing house or a beta reader or anybody for any length of time, there is still an element of anxiety each time you bring them something new that you have spent hours constructing, working on, something that you have spent hours writing and refining and thinking about and worrying about. It may not resonate with you, but what does resonate with me is a heartfelt project. I never write anything that I don't actually like. I don't write it if I don't like it. I mean, that's why we're here, to play with our imaginary friends and have fun with it, or at least that's why I hope you're here. There are some people who have to write for a living and their feelings around what they're doing may be a lot different. I don't depend on my writing income to pay all of my bills, so I have a little bit more freedom around that. If you are also writing to keep food on the table and maintain your home and maintain your family, your stresses are going to be a little bit different than mine, but I do think there are some commonalities. The first thing that always hits for me when I press that send button is elation. It's the highest of high. I've finally finished this thing that I have been working on. And for those of us that have ADHD, oftentimes boredom really, really is our least favorite emotion, our least favorite state to be in. And I say emotion around boredom because boredom to me is very discomforting. But I have to honestly admit that I have been bored very few times in my life. But when I am bored, it's because I have read something so many times, I could probably recite it, but I still need to read over it again because I'm worried about finding errors that I missed and typos and things out of place. So there's that stress to it. But overall, the feeling of being finished with a project that I'm proud of and sending that off, I'm giddy. I'm excited. I want to celebrate with beverages and tell everybody, I did it. It's done. Can you believe it? It's out in the world. And now I can finally start on the new idea that I had for an awesome story in the middle of the book. Because we all know, most of us, when we get to the soggy middle, want to start something new because that'd be more exciting and more fun. So if you've done what I suggested and had that notebook that you kept near you that you could scratch down those ideas for your next book, my best advice here is while that sense of elation is going on, start your next book. Take a couple of days off if you want to celebrate, but get back to it. Get back to work. Why? Why is that so important? Because the next stage that usually hits is anxiety. You're so anxious. Did I make a mistake? What the hell was I thinking? It wasn't ready. I should have spent more time editing it. Oh my God, it's too late. It's out in the world. They'll hate me. I better get to work on the next book, obviously, before they find out I really suck at writing. And why I say it that way is because anxiety is also a big hunk of imposter syndrome. And when that hits, sometimes it's impossible to sit down and write. Imposter syndrome, I think, is a huge part of writer's block. And I don't know that it gets the press that it should around that. But I really believe for a lot of people, suddenly knowing that someone is besides your intimate circle of friends and family and beta readers and alpha readers is going to evaluate your work, whether you're an indie published person and you actually published a book for the world to read, or you are a traditionally published person and you've sent it off to your editor, or you are hoping to be traditionally published and you have sent it off to an agent or to a small press that you're applying to or sending work to for the very first time. All of that anxiety can really build up into a giant state of hysteria over what you've just done. Getting back to work is one of the best ways to shut those voices up, to put them aside, to tell them to go have a seat and get back to work because you're a writer. And remember that writers write. That is all it means to be a writer. You write books. It doesn't say anything about publishing. And really, for all that's good in the world, focusing on being a writer versus focusing on being a published writer is probably the best way to keep yourself from balling yourself up over a submission. The third thing for me, because there is an automatic trapdoor in my brain from anxiety to anger, is anger. And it sounds kind of funny to say, but it's not a funny state to be in. But I get really angry at myself because I think that I've just done a stupid thing. And I have a lot of negative self-talk that goes along with the anger. And then I get really wound out and I'm like, what do I care if they don't accept it? And there is some validity around that in that if your writing is not accepted by a publishing house or by an agent or an editor or whoever, you can publish that bad boy yourself. And you know what? Sometimes that's the right thing to do. Often it's the right thing to do because many times, whoever you're submitting your work to, that story, that novel, that work may not hit with them. It may not hit with the publishing house's vision of who they want to publish. It may not hit for a lot of different reasons that have nothing to do with the quality of your writing or the story. Several of my indie published works were stories that were rejected multiple times. One of my best-selling shorts was a Christmas story that was rejected from over 3 anthologies. By the third time, I thought, okay, nobody's getting this, and that's okay. It doesn't fit. It doesn't fit with anybody else's thing, because typically it was like a Christmas anthology that I was submitting to. I thought, you know what? I'm going to self-publish this because what the heck? I want people to read this story. I love this story. I love the way that I did it, and I like everything about it, and I'm going to self-publish it. And I did, and it was my very first self-published publication. And that's okay too. So we have a lot of freedom. And what I'm trying to say here, that I've said in a lot of words, is that take that anger and frustration at yourself, if you're feeling that, or if you're starting to feel that around the publishing world. Say you've had a string of rejections and you really feel like you're just not fitting in with a publishing house or an editor or an agent, and you want to explore self-publishing. Now is a good time to do it. Take that anger and put it to good use. What I'm trying to say is don't sit and stew. Don't sit and be angry. Don't write nasty letters to people. Don't write nasty emails to people. Don't be cruel and angry to those people around you because you're frustrated with the state of the world and the current state of the publishing and anything else you want to stick in there that you're angry about. Take that anger and turn it into a positive work. Either work on the book that you're working on, because I hope you started it like I told you to, but if you didn't, work on something that will move you along where you want to be on the writing path. Okay? So don't waste that energy. Take advantage of it. Number 4, relief. Relief or resignation. That's when you're talking about these stages, and I really totally ripped off a lot of these from the 4 stages of grief, not that it's a grievous thing to submit a work, but when you get to that resignation or the relief part of it, you realize, A, whatever happens to your manuscript after it leaves your outbox is beyond your control. You can't make anybody like it. You can't make anybody read it. You can't make anybody decide to publish it. It's beyond your control. The only thing you can do at that point in time is get back to work, start working on a new book. That's the first thing you can do. 2, make sure you are doing all the self-care things that you should do all the time anyway. Eat, sleep, drink in reasonable amounts, move your body, get up, walk around, take care of yourself. Writing is very hard on the body. We do a lot of sitting, get up, move around, do those things that make you feel better. And know that it would be in your best interest to make a plan for the 2 possible outcomes. 1, that they accept it and they want to publish your book, or 2, they reject it and they don't want to publish your book. I will have a podcast dealing on each of those things in turn because I think they deserve their own podcast. But just some things you can do quickly. Of course, if it's accepted, celebrate that stuff, shout it from the rooftops, pat yourself on the back, and know that you've accomplished something if that was your goal. If the agent took you on as a client, if your book has been out on submission and they've decided to publish it, if it's a short story or an article or whatever that's been accepted, celebrate that stuff, celebrate yourself. And in the midst of celebration, keep working. I hope that you're picking up on the theme here. The only thing that is going to move you along the road that you want to go along is to keep working, keep writing. Even if it's 15 minutes a day, it doesn't matter. It's something. But keep moving. Don't stop, because once you stop, it's too easy for all of these feelings, the positive ones, elation and resignation. I'm going to count acceptance as a positive thing, relief as a positive thing, because accepting there are things in the world that you cannot control is a very big step towards mental peace. And letting go of anxiety and anger will help you get back to work, and you can skip over the writer's block part that some people really experience after success. And there are many, many, many people in the world, famous people, famous authors have sold a whole bunch of books with their very first book and then became so balled up about it and so fearful and so worried they couldn't write the next book. Don't do that to yourself. Get back to work, say yay, celebrate however you like to celebrate, and then get back to work. Don't wait. Don't wait. Don't let anything derail you from continuing down the path of being a writer that you started on. It's always key to get back to work. Now, what to do if they rejected it? Oh, man. And again, I will have a whole podcast about that. 1, you're going to need to do a whole lot of self-talk. And for those of us who are Neuro Spicy, we have had many, many people over the course of our lives tell us things about ourselves that weren't true, that we're lazy, that we're not good enough, that we're not smart enough, that we're too slow, that we're too fast, that we rush, that we're scattered, that we're fill in the blank for any negative thing. And we've all been told that. The average neuroatypical child experiences so much negative criticism versus neurotypical children in the first part of their lives. It is a wonder that any of us are able to succeed at anything. Because as a child, when a grown-up tells you things, we tend to believe them because they're the grown-ups, right? They're supposed to know. This includes parents, teachers, coaches, you name it. Anybody that told you you weren't enough or weren't good enough as a young person was totally full of it. And remember that they were lying. Your own brain will also lie to you. We all know depression is a big-time liar, and that nothing that depression says is true. And learning that and remembering that is so hard in the moment that you are depressed. It would not be an uncommon thing to become depressed when your work is rejected. It's normal. It hurts. It's sad. You put all that time and effort and energy into it, and they didn't take it. And now what are you going to do? Because every person who told you you were wasting your time seems vindicated in that moment. And that is a big, fat lie. Your work being accepted has nothing to do with you. It is a business decision for every person that chooses your work or doesn't choose your work. They believe that it will sell, and that's how they stay in business. An agent has to make sales in order to exist. A publishing house has to make sales in order to exist. Publishing houses have a vibe that they want to keep. And if you don't fit with that vibe, they're not going to pick your work. People that are putting together an anthology have a particular vibe that they're looking for. If your work doesn't vibe with it, it's not going to get published. If you have mashed together a bunch of different genres and they don't even know where to start marketing your book, they're going to turn it down. That doesn't mean your book is bad. Your book being rejected, or your work or short story or whatever it is, rejection does not mean that you are bad or that your work is bad. And that, if you don't take anything else away from this podcast, take that to the bank. It only means it didn't fit with their business decision, and you can't control their business decision. Okay? So that's my pep talk for today. I hope you're listening to me about this. And I hope that you will take the time after you've sent your work off, or before you send it off, if you've got time to do that, that you will take a moment and just sketch down some ideas of how you are going to take care of yourself if your work is rejected. Okay? So just to recap, the 4 stages as I'm labeling them, okay? And it doesn't matter what you label them. I've labeled them elation, anxiety, anger, and relief/resignation. Because I think that having labels for things, having labels for your emotions or stages or states, and anticipating what may happen if you are in any way neurospicy is one step towards short-circuiting really negative things happening. Having a self-care plan. My daughter is on the spectrum, and whenever we travel, whenever we do something new, we always have a plan. My son has ADHD. I have ADHD. There are people in my family who struggle, all of us struggle with certain levels of anxiety about certain things. And one of the things we do as a family, now that my children are older, they're teenagers, is when we are about to undergo a stressful situation, we always talk about what's our plan. What's our plan if we get to the party and 2 out of the 4 of us are totally overwhelmed and want to go home? What do we do about the 2 that want to stay? Or what if one of us wants to go home? Or can we just stay for a little while? And I know that sounds in some ways an ideal world, and that maybe you don't have people in your life who support you that way. Maybe the rest of your family is neurotypical and you are not. I always say we're lucky because the neuro spiciness in this household is high and we all get it, which means we understand and have a level of understanding of each other that sometimes it's really hard for neurotypical people to understand. So when you have these stages that you're going to go through after you have been brave enough to hit the send button, and I want you to hear me, you are brave. If you have ever sent anything out, a short story, a novel, pitched article idea, it doesn't matter. Whatever you have sent in to a contest or whatever, an agent, editor, anyone outside of your immediate circle, you doing that is the ultimate act of bravery. It is so very hard to expose yourself because when you write, writing is intimate. It's like opening up your brain and allowing people to peer around inside at all of the things that are in there. And some of us have pretty frightening insides of our brains for people who aren't us. I have posted mind maps that I do when I'm going to start a novel. And the reactions that people have to them are really fascinating. There are some people who totally get the scribbles and out of order and how it looks like a big fat mess, but it makes sense to me. And there are other people who just have no idea how a book comes out of all that scribbling. And I can't really show them. That's the closest I can come to showing them a process video. And you know your process. You know you as a neurospicy person. And even if you're not neurospicy people, I don't want you neurotypical people listening to this podcast to feel left out, because you are probably going to have these emotions too, whether or not you're on the spectrum, whether or not you have ADHD, whether or not you have other mental health issues. Everyone on some level experiences these stages, and they don't come in order ever. Because you can go back and forth. One day you're resigned, the next day you're angry, then you might be elated again. It can be a big circle of evolving stages and emotions. And what I want you to do, and what I would love for each and every one of you, is that you sit down, take a little bit of time, and figure out how you're going to deal with that. I will have a podcast up probably within the next month that will go into each of those situations, like, oh my gosh, they're going to publish my book, and damn it, they didn't want it. And I'll talk about those things a little bit more in depth. So that's it for me today. It was a lot in this podcast. I hope that whatever you're working on, that the words are flowing and that you're doing well. I want you to take the time to please make a list of things that you're going to do for yourself after you submit your work. And I hope that you are going to submit your work, because you know what? The world needs to hear your stories. Right now, the world needs art, and the world needs your story. So please keep working. And until next time, keep writing. If you've enjoyed this podcast and found it helpful, please share it and tag me. DM me and let me know what you found most useful. Please leave a review if you have time. It really helps get the podcast in front of more folks. And remember, in the dance between focus and diversion, every stumble is a step closer to mastering the art of writing. Join us next time as we continue to unravel the mysteries of the writer's mind. Until then, keep writing, keep wandering, and embrace the distractions that fuel your creativity. Stay tuned, stay inspired.